Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil A. Colonna, and this is Nashville. Tennessee State University is going through some pretty tough financial times. A group of state lawmakers found that the state underfunded the school by about $500 million last year. The federal government said that number was much too small, as they reported that the state owes TSU $2 billion. This happens at a time when some pretty extreme austerity measures are being taken at the school. In the face of it all, the students of TSU are the ones who bear the brunt of this situation. So we want to talk about it with our experts and you. It's your turn to talk about TSU and the financial crisis they're currently in. So we have some prompts for you. We're going to introduce our guests in a moment, but I do want to hear from you. If you're a TSU alum or not, what are your concerns about the future of their university? Did you go to an HBCU? Do you currently work for a university, and do you have some concerns? And these are corporate problems. Did you work for a corporation that went through something like this, and how did it recover or not? We want to hear from you, so call us at 615-760-2000. That's 615-760-2000. Now, let's meet our guests. Dr. Crystal deGregory is the director of the Mary McLeod Bethune Institute for the Study of Women and Girls at Bethune-Cookman University. She's also a Fisk and TSU alum. Dr. deGregory, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate it. And Rachel Wegner is an education reporter, and Andrea Williams is an op-ed columnist and the curator of the Black Tennessee Voices Initiative. Both are with the Tennessean and former guests of the show. Good to see you both again.
Good to be here.
Thank you both so much. Okay, we're going to get to some questions, but listeners, we do want to hear from you. So give us a call, 615-760-2000. Now, Dr. deGregory, can you just give us some history of historically Black colleges and universities, or HBCUs as they're more commonly known here in the United States?
Sure. While the groundswell of foundings for HBCUs in historically Black colleges and universities, I should first declare, is a federal designation. These institutions meet three essential qualifiers. They were founded prior to the, or at least at the mid-1960s mark. At their founding, their primary mission was the education of African Americans, and third, that they hold some kind of accreditation. So there's a weird thing where you can be a majority white institution in student enrollment at present and also still hold the HBCU designation, as in the case of a Bluefield State or West Virginia State. And you can also be overwhelmingly a Black institution like Chicago State, but it was not founded prior to the cutoff mark in the mid-1960s. So having said that, the earliest of these institutions were actually founded well in advance of the Civil War. There's a debate about what is the oldest. The rationale attached to it is there are three institutions who claim they're the eldest for different reasons. One being Lincoln, one being Cheney, and the other being Wilberforce. The first says we were founded first. And we are the oldest in continual operation. The second says, yes, you were founded first, but you didn't offer degrees until after we offered degrees. And the final is Wilberforce, which says, well, we are an institution of Black people founded by Black people. But again, that has nothing to do with the federal designation. These institutions were founded really by a push of African Americans in the wake of the Civil War. For example, Nashville, Fisk University being the oldest institution of higher education in the city of Nashville. Shout out to my first alma mater. And these institutions usually bear the names of their white benefactors, in the instance of Fisk, like Clinton v. Fisk, but other institutions you may be familiar with, like Spelman or Morehouse, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the founding of public historically Black colleges and universities follows not the first, but really the second Moral Land Grant Act. And these institutions were historically identifiable, easily identifiable in their names. They would bear tribute to their industrial nature, as in Tennessee State at its one of its previous names, A&I, agricultural and industrial. You might have A&M, agricultural and mechanical, so on and so on. And so Tennessee State is a little bit late to the game. Maybe if you kick it back to me, I'll tell you a little bit more about why there's such a gap between the second Moral Act in 1890 and the founding of Tennessee State, not until 1912.
Now, Tennessee State was founded in the early 1900s, and in 58, it was elevated to permanent land grant status. The other land grant designated school in the state is the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. Can you explain to us what it means to be a land grant school exactly?
Yeah, so let me just take it back a bit. So the passage of the first Moral Act was the federal government's first kind of foray into an entanglement with higher education. And these institutions were largely funded to promote liberal and practical education of the industrial classes. And one would imagine in the wake of the Civil War, that should surely include African Americans who had been the free and forced labor force of the building of the American enterprise. And that is undeniably true in the American South. The passage of this act, however, required that not that Black institutions be founded, but that there be access from the state for education to Black people. There was also the option of, instead of founding a new institution, to fund an existing institution and to make sure that it met the federal benchmarks. In the case of the state of Tennessee, what happened is the state said, we'll give the money to the pre-existing, what becomes UT. And then Black people say, well, what about us? And so this isn't tested really until the earliest test we know of Black seeking admittance into UT is in the early 1880s. And the state said, well, this would kind of mess up our school. So what we're going to do instead is we'll pay for Black students to go to the private Fisk University all the way in Nashville. Of course, people saying that said, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And instead, the agreement was reconfigured, and Black students were, for a time then, subsidized by the state to attend the private Knoxville College, which, of course, neighbored UT in Knoxville. It wasn't until the turn of the early 20th century that there was a groundswell of support from Black Nashvillians for the establishment of a dedicated normal school, agricultural and industrial, that grew into what we know to be Tennessee State University. But this was a hard-fought situation. I mean, I always want to be clear that these institutions are not self-segregating. These institutions are a result of systemic segregation, both then and now.
All right. I do want to get to a caller we have in a second, but first, Rachel, I have to ask you generally, can you give us a brief overview, if you can, if it's even possible? I'll take brief out of it. Can you give us an overview of Tennessee State's financial troubles?
Oh my goodness. Brief. So over the last few years, there's been both the push to restore that underfunding that we were just discussing, and also this financial crisis that's been coming to light in more recent months. A lot of that started coming out more with state audits, and then also with new leadership coming in. As some might know, there is an entirely new board over TSU, along with an interim president and an interim VP that he appointed. And they've been going through all the financial history of the school and saying, okay, our operating deficits have fluctuated wildly. We need to get through this fiscal year and then, make sure we have a sustainable future. But in the meantime, they've instituted layoffs, some spending freezes, some hiring freezes, with rumors of more to come. And even recently, as a few weeks ago, said, we were struggling to post payroll. So at this moment, it seems like they're still in triage mode, maybe making some progress to setting things up for whoever the permanent president, to come will be, so that they can carry it forward. But it's been pretty dire for them recently. And it's been a lot of revelations in the last few months of board meetings, especially.
All right, I want to get to a phone call. We got Nathaniel calling from Newbern, North Carolina. First for the Carolina state to call us up. Nathaniel, thank you for calling. What do you want to share with us, my friend?
Yes, hold 1 second. Yes, I was calling because it seems to me that this is all stemming from the UT-Nashville merger. I think as a result of systemic racism. I'm not saying that Tennessee State may have been negligent on some things, but they've been trying to take it over. It's unfortunate that things have not changed that much, that we have to still go through the back door to get what we want. And my main concern is, where are the naysayers? Where are the Too Tall Jones and Oprah Winfrey's and sticking out to save the school?
So you're asking about famous alumni, successful alumni coming back to help out the school financially.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. Well, there's 2 points that Nathaniel is making. One, he's talking about the thought of systemic racism, adding and exacerbating to this problem of the school being underfunded. And also, where are the alumnus who have graduated from the school, done pretty well for themselves? Normally, alumni do give money back to their school. As of now, this is Nashville. We don't know if that has happened from Oprah Winfrey or Ed Too Tall Jones or any other alumni. Did any of their guests, this is a difficult question to ask you all, but do any of you have an idea of the financial contributions that alumni have given to TSU?
It's a good question. There's been a lot of talk of that fundraising, especially in the last board meeting a few weeks ago. I think the leadership's out there rallying people to help. I've seen lots of alumni groups come together, especially around actions at the state legislature last session, that are also advocating for the restoration of underfunding. But as far as the fundraising, I'm not sure if there's been any big notable donations like that recently.
Okay. Now,
if I could chime in.
Yes.
I'd just like to say that, in instances like this, there's a groundswell of support from rank and file people who love their institutions, but largely, large scale philanthropy does not work this way. People don't give tens of millions of dollars. Rich people don't give tens of millions of dollars to you because you need it. Usually wealthy people invest in some kind of solid plan that is going to yield positive results and a return on their investment. And until that is the positioning of a administration, I would not expect large amounts of money from wealthy persons, no matter what their relationship with the institution might be.
Thank you for that. Now, Andrea, you've written a couple op-eds about this. And in one of them, you detail that, yes, the university, TSU, has been extremely, egregiously underfunded by the state. But TSU also owns some responsibility for managing the finances that they did have. Go to a little bit more detail with us.
Yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge what everyone's talked about here, which is the responsibility of the state that was not met. The fact that as Dr. deGregory says, that these are institutions that were born out of segregation. The goal post-emancipation was never to lift up this highly educated class of Black folks. Like, that would just completely undermine the way we do society in America, right? Like, even if we are quote unquote free, there still has to be that bottom class. There still has to be that labor force, which is how you get to the 13th Amendment that outlaws slavery except for crimes. And I think, what we're talking about here is the fact that there is there is no intention really, or I should say the goal is always to do the bare minimum. And so that all of that is really what we're looking for in terms of people that are like, yes, well, the $2.1 billion, like all of that is relevant. However, I mean, I've gotten some strong comments on my columns, but you don't have to ask around for very long to hear people, students, current faculty, staff, former faculty, staff who see the problems within these universities, who say, yes, we are shorted, but the amount of money that we have is not being handled properly, right? Like, I can say, I think someone should pay me $1 million. Or in fact, I can say that I write books. I wrote a book, publisher owes me 50 grand, right? I have 4 kids that I have to take care of. In the interim, while they're not paying me, I can't just go spend wildly because, I know somebody owes me something, right? Like, it's unfortunate that I am owed, and trust and believe I'm going to get my bread. But in the meantime and in between time, you got to work with what you got. And so I think that, we run into the situations very hard to speak critically about HBCUs because of all the other stuff, because these are organizations, these are institutions born out of segregation that are working to do what no other institution would. And so it's a dicey thing to say, okay, actually, we need to lend a critical eye here, but it's important.
I want to thank you for that. Okay, we're going to go to break. I got Jay and Barry on the line. We will come back to you when we come back from break. And when we do that, we're going to return to those phone calls and look at the current impact of the financial situation at TSU. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for prep and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil Colonna, and this is Nashville. We're talking about Tennessee State University and the financial adversity the school has been facing. Now, before the break, we learned about the history of the situation. Now, let's look at some of the current impacts and explore how students, faculty, and staff have been affected. Our guests are Dr. Crystal deGregory from Bethune-Cookman University and 2 journalists from the Tennessean, education reporter Rachel Wegner and op-ed columnist Andrea Williams. The phones are open because we want to hear from you, so call us at 615-760-2000 to share a comment or question. Maybe you can answer this question. What consequences are there to the student body, faculty, and overall academic environment because of these financial difficulties? Again, you can call us at 615-760-2000. We have a very special caller on the line with us right now. Bridget Jones is a TSU alum and assistant director at the Arabia Mountain Heritage Area Alliance. Bridget, thank you so much for giving us a call, being a part of this. Welcome to This is Nashville.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a great moment to be here.
Yes, it's good to have you with us. All right, so you went to TSU. When did you graduate?
I graduated in 2014.
2014. Okay, let me ask you this. While you were attending school, did you know of any of the financial issues that were going on there?
I can't say that I do. Man, I had an amazing experience at TSU, and to be honest, I think I had such an amazing experience that I didn't even pay attention to those types of things. But also, I feel like we had amazing homecomings every year. If housing was ever an issue, it was usually on my part because I filed late in true TSU 19-year-old fashion. So no, I didn't.
Okay. Not even, you didn't even hear of conversations when you went home to visit and to be with family. No one was talking about that off campus?
No, the biggest conversation that I remember was having to defend TSU's reputation as a party school. That was the thing that was a big issue when I was entering TSU in 2009. I remember very early on when they took the Africana Studies department away my freshman year. That was one of the big issues of the time. And, of course, I think looking back at it, that could have been like a red flag as far as funding was concerned. Mm-hmm. But I was in the history department. I was offended by the decision. But as a freshman, I didn't feel like I had much say-so.
I got you. All right. So now what are you hearing concerning the finances of Tennessee State?
Man, so much. I'm hearing that There's the possibility of mismanagement of funds. I do know that the state of Tennessee and the federal government have both kind of agreed that TSU is owed roughly $1 billion. So somewhere along the lines over the decades, that has been just lost in the wind. I'm hearing rumors of lawsuits. I've watched former President Glover speak for herself and give her side of the story on TikTok, actually. So, man, I'm definitely tuned into the conversation.
You're tuned into the conversation. So what's your assessment of the situation and the conversation?
Yeah. I think that it's a combination of issues. I think that systemically, historically, I'm a historian by training. We know the history of Black people and Black institutions within the state of Tennessee and within the South in general. So we know that there's definitely some systemic issues that are playing a big role in this. But also, TSU as a school that is educating a large majority of students coming from urban and lower class environments in many cases, I think they're doing the best that they could with what they had. That's not to excuse any wrongdoing on anybody's behalf, but man, short $2.1 billion, I'm sure they were trying to make the best out of a bad situation, and somewhere along the lines, we got to a point where we couldn't do it anymore.
Mm-hmm. Now, as an alum, what would you like to see for TSU going forward?
I would love to see us get the type of leadership that can push TSU into the future. TSU has an amazing forward-facing brand. We're a Grammy Award-winning band. We've had several students go on to achieve mainstream success. We have a lot going for ourselves, and we're still in the process of setting a stable foundation. So I'd love to see leadership that could lead TSU into what that beautiful future looks like, and actually take us into a land of gold and sunshine.
All right. We want to hear from you. Give us a call, 615-760-2000. That's 615-760-2000. Now, Rachel, give us a sense of the current situation on campus regarding students, staff.
Yeah. So I think the latest round of layoffs and budget cuts have sent some ripple effects through the students, whereas maybe they weren't quite as aware of situations. Now they're very aware. I've also heard some stories of students that maybe lost scholarships that were previously offered to them through some of the COVID relief money. I'm still trying to pinpoint what exactly happened there. And then there's just this general anxiety, like, oh no, like, is our university going to go under?
Yeah.
And it's hard when a lot of the headlines of the place that you love or have had this amazing experience are getting negative attention.
It's interesting because it's a place that students are going there to invest in their own futures. Some of them may be third or fourth or multiple generation college attendees. Other ones may be the first person in their family to attend college. And now you have this for lack of a better term, very shaky situation in regards of their education and their future. Have you talked to any students themselves yet, or are you planning to?
Yeah, so I was out there right as the semester began. I think it was a pep rally for their first home football game. Spoke to a freshman who said, a lot of this didn't affect my decision. I knew I wanted to go. And then some of the student, if it's their student union or student leadership, just saying, we're trying to hear voices of the students say, like, what do they want to change? What do they feel like is lacking? This is a time where we're, dealing with issues like what would we like the board to know, what we'd like our leadership to know. So it seems like they're leaned in, but then maybe like via social media, I've seen some people saying like, oh man, like we're scared, or we're just frustrated that all this is happening. And I don't know if, they've felt the layoffs. I'm not sure if that's been at the faculty level or not. I know there's been over 100 so far, rumors of more coming. I think one of the big budget cuts that students noticed was the band not being able to go on the road with the football team. Just kind of a fond tradition, obviously, the Grammy-winning band.
Yeah.
So things like that, I think, are starting to spill over now into the student community's awareness outside of just seeing some headlines here and there.
Okay. If you are a student or know a student at TSU, give us a call, 615-760-2000. We're going to go to Jay in North Nashville. Jay, thank you for calling us, my friend. What's your comment?
Hey, thank you so much, Khalil. Really appreciate what you do with This Is Nashville, and definitely appreciate you having this as a topic today. So I got, a couple things. One is a comment that, and I think certainly been echoed throughout, that, if TSU had received the funds that they should have received, especially, in somewhat of a timely manner, that we probably wouldn't be facing some of the issues that, we're having today. That being said, I think it was brought up a little earlier and has been sort of mentioned throughout that, there is an accountability from a leadership standpoint, that, hey, going forward, what are we going to actively change, that we can do to improve things? Because let's say we do get it, who's going to be handling it? How are we going to handle it? I am not in agreement with the state coming in and doing anything with TSU, because I don't believe they have the schools or the students' best interest at heart. From my vantage point, it looks like, they're slowly but steady trying to take over, that area, that piece of land that's over there, because it is quite valuable. I don't know if anybody's brought that up yet. And so, there are nefarious things going on from time to time. But
are you talking about the Avon campus in downtown Nashville?
No, I'm talking about where TSU, where the main campus is located. That land has been prime real estate for a long time, and it wouldn't surprise me if there's not some actors that have been attempting to play a long game in this situation. All that being said, though, if we're going to protect ourselves, we've got to have all of our ducks in a row, because it's been said a million times before, you got to be twice as good to get half as much. It's an unfortunate saying, but there are places where that's true. What are we going to do going forward, and the leadership that would be coming in, to tighten the ship? Because I've had friends, I've had family, loved ones that taught there, and heard very similar stories of just consistent issues from year to year to year. So that doesn't mean that the state shouldn't have given us the money, but it does mean that hey, what can we do to keep ourselves in check? Because if you can't watch a six, you're bound to get ambushed.
All right. I want to thank you very much for calling in and sharing that with us. I want to open up to, I'm going to get Barry. I see you on the line. You've been waiting patiently. We are going to get to you, Barry, real quick. But I do want to get a reaction to some of Jay's comments. I want to start with you, Andrea. Jay was talking about, yes, we understand, again, why the school hasn't received the funding, but also there's a responsibility and onus upon the school. And this means so much to so many people here in Nashville and beyond. How do you want to respond to what Jay shared?
I think he's right. Again, I think if you talk to certain people, he mentioned having friends and family who have worked at TSU, who have seen behind the veil, if you will. There was a lawsuit that just came out on Monday, former director of financial aid, who essentially said that, she was told to commit a crime, basically, and state that so many students were eligible for financial aid when she hadn't done the proper checks yet. And she was pressured to do so by the administration. And when she said no, she was fired the next day, told don't even come back via email. So all of those things are relevant and must be discussed. I saw Dr. Glover. She spoke with Roland Martin, and she's kind of 10 toes down on this notion that or not the notion, but the fact that TSU has been underfunded by the state, and really saying that is at the crux of the issues, and stating that now that I don't work for the university anymore, now I'm not president anymore, I can speak freely. She maybe should have spoke freely before, right? If this was such an issue, and I'm not denying it. I've written repeatedly that the money needs to be repaid, but if we have a president who sits and doesn't speak in the way she's speaking now, going out and making this as public of an issue as she is now in defense of herself. She didn't do that while she was there. I think that speaks to a lot of what we have. Yes, there is that struggle to, make $1 out of 15 cents, but also there are things that could have been done, not just in mishandling, but in really putting pressure on and saying, actually, right now, we need to make sure we get this money. She said while she was still in office that, she believes in negotiation, not litigation. And that hasn't worked. That hasn't, this is not, I know we've been focusing, a lot on Dr. Glover recently because of, as Rachel mentioned, the audits and, kind of this present circumstance. But this is a generations long issue. But what we find is that we do get leaders who are, even going back to the early 1960s, when the student sit-in started in Nashville, the then president of TSU got pressure from the state, like, look, shut it down. Shut those kids down over there, right? And so there is that constant, sort of being put between a rock and a hard place. And leadership has to stand up and say, we are going to do this on behalf of the university and the students here, to your point. But also we're going to do what we can with what we have.
All right. Dr. deGregory, would you like to chime in? Dr. deGregory, do we have you? We got some technical.
Yes, we do.
Okay, awesome. You're back with us.
Yeah, I'm back. Actually, it's good to hear from Bridget. I actually taught at Tennessee State for close to a decade, in addition to being a graduate. And so, some of the things you're talking about in terms of the culture and the sense of the institution, that there may have been trouble afoot, I definitely do not think was present at the time at which Dr. Glover assumed the presidency of the institution. I say that especially juxtapositioning to my experience as a student and also as an alumna of Fisk, where, we've had this conversation many, many times over. I think there's presumably a lot of safety in being a land grant or a public institution, that you don't have to raise every single dollar, and you shouldn't have to, because these are public institutions. They are funded by taxpayer dollars. And, contrary to popular belief in this country, African Americans are taxpayers and have always been taxpayers. So one of the things for me that I don't think that people are really tracking, as an HBCU historian and a cultural commentator, and I mean, someone who loves these places dearly, is the way in which people with less than stellar records get passed from institution to institution. So, for example, who was the CFO at Tennessee State during this time? What was the CFO's prior employer? And what was the experience of that institution? A simple Google search would yield lots of information. This position that Tennessee State finds itself in is the same position that his former employer, Kentucky State, finds itself in. So we need to start to connect the dots here. What is going on with these people? This is a very unpopular position to take as a person who loves these institutions. And Black people, we are forced to operate within the confines of Black respectability that says, we can't call out each other, because obviously there's white supremacy that will hold on to anything that we can give it in order to oppress and suppress and repress us as a people, and also as institutions. And these are powerfully transformative institutions. They, of course, are the root of the Black middle class. I mean, Dr. Glover herself is a product of this institution. A part of I remember the presidential search before she was confirmed. And a part of the reason that she was such an attractive candidate was because she holds an MBA and a CPA. So how does a shortfall of $40 or $50 million escape you, when a part of the reason that you got this job is because of your financial expertise? That's a very unpopular truth. But two things can be true at the same time. Has Tennessee State historically been systemically underfunded? Yes. Has the immediate administration done a bad job in managing not just its financial resources, but its fiduciary responsibility to the institution and its personal connection to students like Bridget, like myself, like Glenda Glover herself, like Oprah? I mean, the whole idea that someone aloft in the sky owes this institution more than people who are on its payroll as employees, who are employed to do the job of protecting its operations and making certain that it has a viable future, somehow is unpopular. And I know why it is, and it always is, but it is definitely the truth.
That is something that we're going to talk about when we come back from break. All right. We've talked about the past. We've examined the present. Now we're going to look forward to the future and see how TSU can move on from these tough financial times. We still want to hear from you. So Barry and Tracy, hold on to the line and be like Barry and Tracy and give us a call, 615-760-2000. We'll be right back. I'm Khalil Ekalona, and this is Nashville. We are talking about the tough financial waters that Tennessee State University has been swimming in for quite some time now. We discussed TSU's egregious underfunding by the state, how school leadership has challenges, and the current impact on students and the staff in school. Now we're going to try to look to the future and hope for a better day for the local institution that means so much to so many people, but we also want to get to your phone calls. How much does TSU's future matter to you? We want your voice on the show. What does the future look like? What should it look like? What has to happen to fix it and make TSU as much a priority as other state institutions? You can call us 615-760-2000 to answer those questions, pose a question, or share a comment. Our guests today are two journalists from the Tennessean, education reporter Rachel Wegner and op-ed columnist Andrea Williams. They're joined by Dr. Crystal deGregory of Bethune-Cookman University, who is also a Fisk alum. Now, I promised our callers I would get to him. Barry, you have been waiting on the line for a long time, my friend. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you for calling. What would you like to share with us?
Okay. I think I want to start by saying that I am from a family group. My wife and my family, we combined, we have earned 40 degrees from TSU.
Wow.
So I want to start with that. Mm-hmm. Secondly, I want to say that there is a line in the Merrill Act, the 1890 Merrill Act, that says that the onus is on these states. They have to establish and fund. That language is in there. I am the principal speaker for the Save the TSU Community Coalition, and so I'm very familiar with that Merrill Act. And so that phrase is something that the state of Tennessee is in direct violation of. Because you establish the institution, but then you don't fund the institution. You steal the money, you misappropriate the money. And I also want to say that there are a number of alumni who are giving money to the school. We have over some 900 groups that give money to, or individuals that give money to the institution on an annual basis. I'm a member of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity. We gave. Last year, we gifted the school our first $100,000 plus, and so there's a lot of that going on. This year, during homecoming, we had two different families. One family gave, I think, like $3 million. Another family gave about $4 million. I'm certain there was $10 to $12 million raised just during the homecoming. So in terms of the band not going to D.C. and all that, there were funds to do that. All that stuff is nothing but a smokescreen to help the state legislators to take over the school. One gentleman said earlier, they're very much upset. You got to understand, you go back to 1978, there's the Geyer case, Geyer versus TSU, where we got the downtown campus. You got to understand, that's the only time that's happened that I'm aware of in the history of this nation where you had a PWI lose its land and its building to an HBCU. And clearly, they're still mad and upset over that. I also want to say that in terms of President Glover gave a lot of her personal treasure to the school. I was in the stands at her last graduation when she told the students, hey, I want to take all of you to lunch. Reach under your seat. She gave every graduating student last May a $50 cash bill. Do you think this current president is going to do that? No. See, so there's a lot being said, and I am a former employee of the school. I do a lot of. I was on campus today, enrolling family members. I have like 5 current family members enrolled in the school right now. Mm-hmm. See, so I do not believe. Well, it's not that I just don't believe. I'm on the inside working hard. The way I'm fighting this fight, I'm giving my treasure. I'm helping others to bring their treasure, and I'm bringing students. That's how I'm fighting this fight. Because the thing that has helped TSU all this time, when you had presidents like Dr. Glover, like Dr. Humphreys, like Dr. Hefner, with his statement, students matter most. And that's been one or two others. But those three, I can tell you, they used what they had to make a difference. Dr. Glover's big strategy was she had good numbers. She was trending toward, we were past 8,000. We were trending toward that 10,000 mark for students. Now, why does that make a difference? When dorm rental and student tuition goes a long way. I don't know how many people know this, but the state of Tennessee only gives TSU a little more. It's about 23%, between 20 and 23% of its budget. The rest of it comes from alumni, dorm rentals, and tuition. And that's not something I'm just saying to you. That's something you can check. And also,
I do understand. I really thank you so much, Barry, for making all of these points and understand that how much Tennessee State University means to you personally, what it means to your family. You've got generations and dozens of degrees from there. I do want to give a chance for our guests to comment. I mean, Barry's coming from the stance of he's putting the onus on the state for the financial malfeasance in not necessarily funding the school correctly. But we've also heard the point today that Dr. Glover and previous leadership did not do everything they could to ensure that the state was in good situation. How do we kind of, in the public, as we look to the future, Rachel, how do we kind of wrestle with this dichotomy?
Yeah, I think that that's a dynamic that the new leaders are mindful of. I find that they've been pretty cautious in discussing the underfunding so far because what's right in front of them is everybody being new, right? Like the entire board and the upper leadership are all new. And so I think while they have nodded to the underfunding, they seem pretty hyper-focused on getting their affairs in order now. And they sat through a state commission where they were, again, under scrutiny, saying what's happening, what's going on, payroll and money and cuts and all these things happening. So I think that will continue to be a balancing act for anybody that's in leadership at TSU.
Mm-hmm. All right, we're going to go to a call from Tracy. Tracy, thank you for waiting patiently. What would you like to share with us? Tracy, can you hear me? Hi.
Yes, I can. Hey, I wanted to say that, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I wanted to say that one thing, you do a great job hosting. I'm just always amazed.
Thank you.
But the other thing is I was the director of TSU's evening child care center at the downtown campus for 5 years. And, those were people who worked all day. Their kids went to daycare during the day, then came there and went to daycare at night while their parents took a few classes. It took a long time to get a degree that way, but the parents did it. And I would hate to see Nashville lose that resource. And my understanding is they're talking about getting rid of that campus. I just hate to see that happen.
That is a really, really good point. There's a lot more people than just 18-year-olds are going to college. There's people of all ages, people who have families who are in different life situations. That campus is a vital part to the community here at TSU. It's the place that Tracy worked. She understands the resource of it. She understands what it gives people, this opportunity for the American dream, yet there's potential for that to be lost. Dr. deGregory, when you think about some of these essential resources that are out there and opportunity that could be lost with TSU's current financial problems, what does that make you think of?
It's true, but the reality is Tennessee State University is not going to be closed. Okay, it's already markedly over the past kind of almost half century since the Geyer case, increasingly whitened over time. It is a a potential flagship institution in the largest, fastest growing city in the state capital. I mean, it's just not going away. Will it change? Yes. And in part, if we want these institutions to reflect who we are as a people, to serve our needs as they had historically done so well, then we have to be good stewards of them. We have to be good leaders of them. And I'm sorry, putting $50 under graduate students, candidate seats at graduation is not impressive to me. What would be impressive to me is, managing the books. keeping as close to being in the black as you possibly can be. And until we are ready to separate ourselves from the emotionality of conflating, say, a Frederick Humphreys, who by and large was one of the best college presidents in all of American history, not just in Tennessee State's history, with someone who we know and maybe is affable and certainly is likable and liked and by lots of people, then we will continue to find ourselves in these same kinds of hard places. But I also want to say too that the very best presidents of Kentucky, of Tennessee State University, were its first president Hale, and then Walter Strother Davis. I mean, it's just like we've kind of like thrown away that first class A1 education approach, and also approach to administration and to fiscal management and to fiscal responsibility.
Thank you for that. And Tracy, thank you so much for calling. We really appreciate you calling and listening to the show as you do.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Now, Andrea, as we kind of we have a couple minutes left. I do want to wrap this up with a general sense of what are we looking at for the future? What do we want for the future with this financial, and in some ways I see it as an ethical conundrum that we're in.
Yeah, I think Dr. deGregory makes a really good point. Like, we have to be willing to assess the mistakes, the missteps, call them out for what they are. We have to be willing to do that amongst ourselves as a community. We have to be willing to say, okay, yeah, the state, these white folks over here, they're not doing right, but also we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard. We have to be willing to do that. We have to also understand, for the gentleman who says, you know, my wife and I, my family, we have 40 degrees amongst us, all from TSU. We have to be willing to consider those not in that position, right? To the point about the parents who, you know, it may take them 5 or 6 years to get that degree because they're working at the same time and they got to drop their kids off at daycare, or I'm first generation. These types of decisions that have been made that, you know, may have benefited, you know, that top tier of administration, you know, that certainly don't impact them in the same way via the fallout, right? Like, they're not the ones that are getting laid off. Those people, we have to be willing to consider the least of us and what these decisions do to those folks who need these institutions to be in good financial standing, right? If we are, and I've said repeatedly, if we are going to go get this money, you have to control the controllables in the interim. Should we have to be twice as good? Should we have to, you know, always pretty it up and play by respectability politics and do all these things and be perfect? We should not. But understanding that at the end of the day, this money is held by the state, like they control the purse strings here. All of this foolishness that's going on right now can't happen if you're going to then turn around and be like, yo, run me my money. Like that's just not, that doesn't fly anywhere else in society. And so we have to be willing to do that. We have to be willing to do the internal work, to be self-critical and, you know, not jump on the defensive when folks are like, hey, I don't think this is right. Like this. Yeah. Same sentiment on the $50 under the seat. Like what does that mean at the end of the day? What does that mean at the end of the day? We're talking about a few hundred folks. Like, what does that mean when we are jeopardizing opportunities for thousands to come in the future? Like, it means nothing.
Is this a generational difference when it comes to looking at this? You know, Dr. deGregory, I do want to kind of give you the final word real quick, briefly. Rachel, you're going to be continuing to cover this. What are you looking at for the future?
I'm certainly interested in how they move forward with their search for a new president. We have to be a very specific person, right? Also, there is a lot of scrutiny on Dr. Glover, unfortunately, with the contract she still holds with the university that should be about $1.7 million over the next 4 years. And there's been some back and forth about if they can get out of that contract or not. And along with the scrutiny she's been getting for how things are managed, I think that might be part of what they have to talk about in the future. But yeah, I know they've been pushing to be an R1 university, Research One, and want to stabilize their enrollment and also their finances.
All right. Dr. deGregory, I got about 30 seconds. Wrap us up, if you will.
The road ahead will be tough, but it will clear. It will clear. But most importantly, we need to get on all the same page that Tennessee State is not owned by any of us in this generation. We borrowed her from the future. She deserves our absolute support, and support sometimes looks like criticism, constructive criticism, but criticism nevertheless. This is like every other reparation. Yes, you're owed it. Will you get it if you do not position yourself in a way in which this will sell?
I want to thank you. Thank you so much for being here. We're out of time. Dr. Crystal deGregory is director of the Mary McLeod Bethune Institute for the Study of Women and Girls at the Bethune-Cookman University. She's also a Fisk and TSU alum. Rachel Wegner is education reporter, and Andrea Williams is op-ed columnist and curator for the Black Tennessee Voices Initiative with the Tennessean. Thanks to you for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced by Mary Mancini, directed by Tasha A.F. Lemley. Our board operator is Michael Pollard. 3 days in a row, WNXP has hooked us up. Thank you for that. Special thanks to all of you for listening, for calling in. You make the show what it is. We really appreciate it. You can listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get good podcasts. The conversation never ends here. Comment and tell us what you want to hear from the show by leaving us a message, 615-751-2500. I'm Khalil Ekalona. We'll see you on Monday, everybody, and be good to each other.